The recent oil spillage from the machinery depot triggered concern among the affected community. Ghana's government is initiating measures to revive its dwindling economy amid high inflation. And the WTO's 12th Ministerial Conference gets underway in Geneva. Well, this and more coming ahead on The World Today. Hello, this is Eyeafrica TV and you are watching the World Today News Bulletin live from our studios in Banjul. Many thanks for joining us. I am Amadou Kante and now the news in detail. Now, fishermen and the Kambo East community of Piran said their livelihood earning from fishing has been threatened by the recent oil spill or from the machinery depot. Now, as the Intersectoral Task Force Committee set up by the government continues to investigate the cause and effects of one of the biggest oil spill in the country, oyster collectors also said they have been forced to abandon their lively earning activity. Mafuji Sise has the details in this report.
However, the villagers of Pirang have complained that the oil spillage has sent the fishes away from being accessed and their nets tainted with the black oil. Sajo Bojang is the chairman of the Pirang Fishermen Association. He is worried that the spillage can be the root cause of the end of fishing in their community, a source of livelihood to many in Pirang and its satellite communities. My name is Sajo Bojang. I am the chairman of the Pirang Fishing Association and the school development chairman, and I also work as a fisherman. We walk to the oil spillage and this has made our fishing very difficult as our nets were tainted and we cannot remove them with all our efforts. This has made many fishermen not embark on fishing because we are not getting fish anymore. Spillage can kill the fish and can bring problem to the industry and the mangroves and our fishing business. Kekuta Sane is a fisherman residing in Pirang who is also worried about them losing their customers.
It was 1992.
I have been a fisherman since 1992, but I have never seen such an oil spillage in our river. Upon seeing the spillage, I urge my community to contact the fisheries to indicate to them that there is a problem in our sea. We are seeing something in the river that we are not used to seeing. But all of a sudden, we hear it over the media that there is an oil spillage that occurred in Mandinaring Depot, about so many liters. But this spillage has affected our boats, fishing nets, and even our hands looking at it. This is a witness to my testimony that oil spillage has reached our community and caused so much havoc to us and our livelihood. As alluded by the previous speaker, this can affect not only our fishing but the sirams, and most of our customers are from the restaurants and beaches, and hearing the news that our community is affected by the spillage can bring a problem to our business.
You see this?
Suleiman Keda underscored that the spillage did not find him in the Pirang community, but upon return, he found out that the rope that he ties his boat all turns black and thought that someone had poured chemical on it to spoil it, but little did he knew that it was the spillage. Omar Bojang, chairman of Pirang Village Development Committee, has this to say.
I'm aware of the spillage that happened at Mandinaring, that spread over to other areas until Pirang, here, our community.
For Eyeafrica News, I am Mafuji Sise.
And from the report by Mafuji Sise, moving on, leaders in the private sector development in Africa have held their annual stakeholders forum in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire. Now, the 2022 edition availed the African CEOs the opportunity to review the long-standing challenges and propose new routes for the continent's growth. Now, during the meeting, the African CEOs also urged governments to provide legal frameworks to empower their activities. Let's have more details of that in this report.
Less than 10% of infrastructure investment in Africa comes from private sources. Despite the huge gap, African investors are struggling to make their contribution. Obstacles ranging from risk perception, rates of return, regulations, and the capacity to secure long-term loans have held Africa's infrastructure development back. These are some of the key pointers discussed at this year's Africa CEO Forum in Abidjan.
The two key elements that we're trying to put in place for the Africanization of the infrastructure sector in particular is how do we mobilize the massive amounts of investment capital that is already available on the continent, and how do we convince the people that are controlling that money to prioritize the infrastructure sector as a viable asset class to give them a return. The second piece that we are looking at there is how can the African investors in developing these projects find the right partners and find the right capital for themselves to be able to afford to participate in what are generally very, very large transactions. So it is an element of partnership with global parties and trying to find local currency financing to match local currency revenue. That is what the Africanization of infrastructure means.
To encourage local investment on the continent, CEOs at the forum called for governments to pass new investment laws that make the legal environment attractive.
One of the key focuses of the last 5 to 10 years has been getting public-private partnership legislation to enable private sector investment in the first place. The next thing that we need to do is look at it enabling legislation, enabling regulations to allow for investment into this new asset class. So you will find in many countries across the continent, pension funds, for instance, where we have $2 trillion worth of local currency capital for investment. In many countries, those pension funds are not legally allowed to invest in the infrastructure sector. So the first piece is allowing it and then working to encourage that to move forward. So we have the legislation to do the project. We now need the legislative and the regulatory frameworks to encourage locals to participate in the projects in their own countries.
The delegates also raised the importance of increasing domestic capital to give companies the ability to borrow in local currencies and improve services.
One of the most significant and beneficial sources of capital is domestic capital. No nation built its infrastructure on the currency of another nation. You build your infrastructure based on your own savings. And it is really because Africa has been so behind on its development trajectory that we've had to call on basically international development sources to try to rapidly build our infrastructure. But what we realize is that to be able to impact the diverse sectors of infrastructure across energy, transport, waste, water, that domestic capital is going to be very powerful. Africa has about $2 trillion worth of domestic sources of capital, and to the extent that we can tap more of those sources to work alongside international partners, we would have a much more sustainable finance mechanism for the continent.
The Africa CEO Forum demonstrates the existence of financing opportunities for private investors in the African continent. Data shows that investment opportunities in Africa are stronger in sectors such as clothing, communication, energy, financial services, food, health, housing, and transport.
From Abidjan, next to Accra we go, because Ghana's economy is dwindling amid high inflation and skyrocketing prices of food commodities, forcing authorities to initiate measures to mitigate the challenges. The government sets to look for a $100 billion financial loan from its international banking partners to help resuscitate the crippling economy. However, some analysts opine that the new approach may not yield lasting solution, whilst advising the government to contact IMF. Here's more details of that in this report.
Ghana's economy is reeling under high inflation, which was up nearly 28% in May. Food prices, the cost of living, everything is skyrocketing. It comes on top of the country's weakening currency. To shore up its financials, the government is looking to secure a $1 billion loan from some international banks to support its budget this year. Ghana borrows at least $5 billion from the international markets every year. Economists say it will only help Ghana's ailing economy in a short term.
It's going to help in improving our foreign exchange buffer. In the end, helping the economy in that regard as expected. we have, foreign exchange obligations in terms of our interest payment this year. And so chunk of this money is coming, obviously will go into payment of interest. So it's like money coming in and money going back.
Out of the $1 billion loan, $750 million is expected to come from 8 African and European banks, while $250 million will come from other lenders. The government plans to use part of the loan to fund its infrastructural projects this year. It will also use the rest of the loan to beef up Ghana's foreign exchange reserves. It hopes this will help stabilize the local currency, the cedi, against the US dollar. But some analysts are concerned about the country's ballooning debt, which is inching closer to an unsustainable level at 78% to GDP. They want the government to instead go to the International Monetary Fund for help.
Going to IMF, at least they will pump in something into our economy in exchange of discipline, that we may have to offer them, that we're going to be financially disciplined. I think if we have, IMF monitoring us, it controls, most of our financial indicators.
But the government says it is not considering an IMF bailout as yet. It hopes some of its homegrown solutions, including raising money through taxes and spending cuts, will help keep the economy afloat.
And that report is coming from the Ghanaian capital, Accra. Now, like in many countries, South Africans have joined the fray in donating blood to help save lives as part of events marking this year's World Blood Donor Day. Now, Blood Donor Day is set aside to celebrate and raise awareness on the need and the significance of giving blood and blood products for transfusion. Now, doctors at the Western Cape Blood Service lauded people's commitment to donate blood, whilst encouraging for more due to the high demand. Here's more details of that in this report.
Donating blood can help save lives and is critical in supporting South Africa's healthcare system with safe blood products. The Western Cape Blood Service runs a number of donation clinics across the region, collecting blood that will be used in healthcare facilities. The service tries to have all blood groups in its bank, but sometimes those stocks can run low.
Always aim to have a 5-day blood stock supply. So what that means is in all the blood groups, we always aim to maintain it. As soon as it drops to 2 days, that's when we really start getting very critical and there's a huge shortage of blood. So that is why we continuously ask people to come and donate. We always request new donors to come forward to ensure that we do have sufficient stock to ensure that we can supply the needs of the Western Cape and the Western Cape patients.
The Western Cape Blood Service leads by example, and some staff members donate blood when the need arises. The team makes the process simple and easy. There is always a need for more blood donations as demand remains high.
They donate a unit of whole blood, so it's very rare that that unit actually gets used as a whole blood unit. It comes back to our head office, it goes to our labs, and from there it gets processed down into 3 different products, namely plasma, platelets, and red cells. And those products then get used and distributed to hospitals within the Western Cape, where it gets used for various different, from trauma right through to childbirth, to everyday emergencies.
For now, each blood unit that is being donated can save up to 3 people's lives. It is a precious gift that simply cannot be manufactured, but can only be sourced from well-meaning donors. The Western Cape Blood Service collects more than 21,000 units of blood a month, which is used to treat patients in both public and private healthcare facilities. While those blood transfusions are critical in saving lives, the overall high demand means there's always a need for more donors to donate more blood.
This is Eyeafrica TV and you are watching the World Today News bulletin live from our studios in Banjul. And from the report there in South Africa, we now take a break and come back shortly. Welcome back. This is Eyeafrica TV, and once again, many thanks for joining us. And now, let's look at the rest of the stories. Now, world ministers are currently taking part in the World Trade Organization's 12th Ministerial Conference in Geneva, Switzerland. Now, during the conference, the ministers will have the opportunity to review the functioning of the ministerial trading system, to make general statements, and to take action on the future work of the WTO. The conference is co-hosted by Kazakhstan and chaired by Mr. Timur Solmand, Deputy Chief of Staff of Kazakhstan's President. Our reporter, Binti Jallo, is covering the event in Geneva and Sina reports.
The world is grappling with uncertainty and crisis on multiple fronts. The war in Ukraine and inherent international security crisis that comes with it. The health, economic, environmental, and geopolitical crisis. Members of the WTO thought that this is a time to demonstrate that multilateralism works, a time to demonstrate that the WTO can deliver for the international community and the people they serve. Nearly 5 years have passed since the last ministerial conference. While many members of the WTO took some important steps towards using trade as a vehicle for women economic empowerment, the meeting didn't really deliver. Although ministers did commit to completing the fisheries subsides negotiations, they could not even agree on reaffirming the importance of the rules-based multilateral trading system and the WTO's founding principles. A trust deficit dating back on the breakdown of the Doha round and even before it took its toll. Members across the globe are once again gathered in Geneva to see ways of resolving economic crisis that the world is faced with. Speaking at this opening ceremony on Sunday, WTO's Director General, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, highlighted that the WTO has faced a lot of negativity over the past years.
The negativism is compounded by the negative advocacy of some think tanks and civil society groups here in Geneva and elsewhere who believe the WTO is not working for people. This is, of course, not true, although we've not been able to clearly demonstrate it. But it worsens the trust deficit that I've noticed in these past 15 months. Despite this, ambassadors have been working very hard, trying to overcome, to work hard together, and working to deliver. I want to say a heartfelt thank you to all the ambassadors in Geneva.
Dr. Okonjo-Iweala said that the challenges they are currently confronting are also opportunities.
Between now and Wednesday, we have a chance to show the world that the WTO can step up to the plate, that we can act to correct these institutions' problems, to reform and modernize it, that we can strike agreements in Geneva that will enhance the ability of all members to respond to people's aspirations at home. Aspirations for food, for health, for security, for better jobs, higher living standards, and sustainable environment on land, in the oceans, and in our atmosphere.
MC12 was originally scheduled to take place in June 2020 in Nur Sultan, Kazakhstan, but was postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In April 2021, members agreed that MC12 would take place in Geneva from 30th November to 3rd December. However, an outbreak of a new highly transmissible strain of the COVID-19 virus and
Well, we apologize for that interruption there, but of course we move on to our final story now, because the lack of adequate electricity supply in Pakistan is affecting businesses and public activities in the country. This situation has left business owners lamenting over their predicaments thanks to the inadequate power supply. Now, the government is, however, initiating measures to address one of the country's worst energy crises. Here is more details of that in this report.
Electricity shortfall in Pakistan has reached 6,500 megawatt, along with power outages of 8 hours in the country and up to 12 hours here in Lahore, despite an announcement from the government to bring down load shedding to 3 hours a day. Sanaullah operates a hotel in Lahore's main market and says his business is suffering.
There's no set schedule of power cuts. Electricity comes and goes every hour. Fuel prices have skyrocketed. We have put UPS inverters in, but the batteries don't charge. Our business is taking a hit.
According to the Water and Power Development Authority, the demand for electricity peaked at 28,000 megawatt against the available supply of 22,000 megawatt.
There is a technical issue. Our energy mix is not very good. First of all, we were used to produce all our energy through hydel sources. Now we are shifting from hydel. Most of our bucket is we are using from solar or coal power plants, which are very expensive. So when we shifted to coal power plants, the cost to produce that electricity is very high, which in our present situation our government cannot afford.
30-year-old Muhammad Adil owns a handmade shoe kiosk.
We have to raise the prices of our shoes, and that's not fair because we have to pay for the generator's fuel. Our cost for running businesses is going up every day. Now the government is planning to shut down markets in the evening to save energy. I feel I have to shut down my business soon.
To battle one of its worst energy crises, the government has announced several measures to bridge the demand-supply gap. Apart from shutting down markets early, it has been decided to ban wedding functions after 10 p.m. All public offices and educational institutions will follow a 5-day work week to conserve energy. The government is also looking into the possibility of making Friday a mandatory work-from-home day for government employees, and street lights would be operated on alternate days. By these measures, the government hopes to lower energy consumption by 10% and bring some sort of a relief to the people who are already suffering from the ongoing heat wave and power crisis.
Energy crisis in Pakistan, and from the report there we now bring this news edition to an end. But for more details on this and other stories, as always, as ever, you can visit on our website on Eyeafrica.tv. But for now, many thanks for the pleasure of your company. Thanks for watching and do have a pleasant evening. Bye for now.